Germany is growing, but what is actually growing? Hello everyone. I have been looking at Germany's economic numbers again these days, and I think they deserve to be read differently from the way that the recovery is usually presented. So first we begin with the facts, then my analysis will follow. So here we go. In 2025, German GDP grew only by 0.2% after 2 consecutive years of contraction. Then the direction changed a little bit by the end of 2025 because in the last quarter, 2025, Germany had a total growth of 0.3%. Then came the first quarter 2026 with a total growth of 0.4%. Then the second quarter 2026 with a total growth of 0.2%. So when you look at quarter number 2, 2026 versus quarter number 2, 2025, you have a total growth of 0.9% in Germany. For context, France also grew by 0.2% in the second quarter 2026, while the euro area expanded by a total growth of 0.4%. Germany's year-on-year rate, which is again 0.9%, sits slightly above France, which has a total growth of 0.7%, but still both of them below the euro area average, which is 1.0%. The forecasts remain modest because you have on the one hand 0.6% growth for 2026 according to the EU Commission, and on the other hand, you have a 0.7% according to the OECD. So yes, it is safe to say Germany has moved away from contraction, but when I look beyond the GDP, I see something much more interesting happening. So, Germany's manufacturing PMI reached 54.1 in August 2026. This is the strongest reading in 51 months, right? So then the new manufacturing orders also rose by 3.1% in June 2026. And then you have also the industrial production, which increased again by 0.2%. At the same time, right, services fell by 48.5%. So their 5th consecutive month of contraction. That immediately in my head raises a question, a big question by the way. So which part of Germany is actually recovering? Does anyone know? So let us look at the number or at the numbers or the analysis. For instance, the industrial export-oriented Germany appears to be finding some traction. From my point of view, especially in machinery, electronics, and increasingly defense-related production. But the service-oriented Germany is still struggling, right? And the labor market makes the picture here even more confusing because in Germany, we had around 45.6 million employed people in the first quarter 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, this is 157,000 fewer than a year earlier, while average gross wages also increased by 4.1%. GDP is rising. This is factual according to the report. Wages are also rising, but on the other hand though, employment is falling. And I found this combination here to be particularly revealing, or I shall say, I found it to be quite interesting to look at because it suggests that the German companies may increasingly be looking for growth through productivity, restructuring, and automation rather than through expanding employment. So you have manufacturing, which is shedding labor while stabilizing also output. And this is a very classic, by the way, capital deepening process. Overall labor productivity growth has averaged only by 0.3% over the past 6 years, when you have in first quarter 2026 a modest rose by 0.5%, and this is year-on-year data. Unit labor cost growth is now also slowing from previously elevated levels as productivity ages higher in the tradable sector. So services remain more labor intensive but also stagnant at the same time. right? So Germany finally may be getting some of the productivity it long lacked, but only in selective area and also at the price of a more bifurcated labor market. All right, so there is also another fundamental change that deserves attention here, and to be honest with you, I found it to be quite interesting, and that is the German state is becoming a much larger economic actor. So you have infrastructure and then the defense expenditure that are increasing significantly, with the fiscal deficit expected to reach around 3.7% of GDP by the end of 2026. So this is no longer just a budget line question. It is becoming, like defense question, is becoming a quasi-industrial policy. Rheinmetall order, for example, backlog alone stood at a record, pay attention, 80.5 billion at the end of the first half of 2026, meaning by the end of June, like the 30th of June 2026. And this right here is a total growth of plus 44% when looking at the year-on-year report. And their management is still targeting a further significant rise by the end of this year again. So whether this marks a temporary stimulus or the start of a long-lasting reorientation of Germany's industrial base, from my point of view, this remains an open question. Nonetheless, Germany is moving away from a combination of a well-known economic model, and that economic model was, until lately, it was export manufacturing plus fiscal restraint plus relatively predictable energy plus globalized supply chains. And I believe, or this is my prediction, the new emerging model is public investment plus defense plus industrial restructuring plus productivity plus technology. So some of this model, or my prediction here, can still move or change by the time, but I believe this is the direction more or less the German economy is taking. But here is where I become a little bit more cautious to call all of this analysis an economic recovery, because Germany's old vulnerabilities have not disappeared. They still remain, or at least I can still observe them in many of the economic areas. All right, so energy is still expensive, and although this is factual, I would very much encourage you to not look at the surface here, but to look at the differences between the sectors, because you have on the one hand heavy energy users like chemicals, metals, glass, and paper. They are the ones who continue to struggle. On the other hand, though, you have the high-tech and the machinery companies. They need less energy, and they are also the ones who are currently recovering. An internal sorting is also happening in some way, because you have the old traditional company called the Mittelstand in Germany. They are quietly being pushed out or forced to move. So some of them are automating their processes, while other ones are climbing higher in the value chain. From all of this, what I can observe, or what I can say, is that productivity outside of manufacturing is indeed still weak. And then you have also the demographic pressure that is growing, further growing, yes, and also coming into play. So the domestic demand stays fragile, although the real incomes are rising, as we saw at the beginning of this. Household keep saving a lot and stay careful with spending on services. And another important point to be mentioned here is that trade is becoming more political, right? Because you have stronger demand from the US and the security partners, and a tougher competition from China. And according to further report, infrastructure is also not still good enough, right? So another layer coming into play in this analysis, yes, a lot is happening, and it is happening at the same time, but we have to speak about all of that. Right, so another layer in this analysis is that the gap between the different regions in Germany is getting wider. You have, again, a stronger south of Germany, meaning Baden-Württemberg and Bayern, like Bavaria. They are economically doing better than the eastern states. I think this is not new. And even the physical geography of Germany's industry is also becoming an economic factor because you have the producer prices that rose by 3.0% year on year in July 2026, with an intermediate or immediate goods up to 5.4% and energy 3.8%. Another point or another detail I have to mention here is the low water levels at the Rhine, because this is limiting shipping capacity and raising transport costs for industry, and this is a clear sign of deeper cost and resilience problem. So for me, when I look at all this, because everything is happening at the same time, right? And it is happening in different directions. So when I look at all this, the question has completely shifted in my mind. Germany is no longer dealing only with energy problem, from what I can see. Germany is dealing with a combination of problems, and that is energy, production cost, logistic, infrastructure, climate resilience. And that is why I don't think the most interesting comparison, or it would be safe to say, Germany was in recession in 2025 and now Germany is growing in 2026. I think this is very simple analysis. I think one has to be more careful and sensitive when looking at these numbers and everything around them. From my point of view, I would rather say in 2025, Germany was actually trying to stop things from getting worse. And in 2026, Germany is trying to rebuild a new economic model that is more adapted to the current economic situation in the EU, in Europe, but also worldwide. And this is where I would slightly put another question, but very cautiously. So do not go too many steps ahead. So very cautiously, I would ask, is Germany trying to build a new economic model based on productivity, high productivity, high wages, smaller workforce, industrial core partly supported by the state, and much more focused on security and technology? Because this would be actually a very interesting road to go. And this is what I will be watching in the second half of this year. I have already started, so hopefully I will be giving this analysis by the end of this year. And with that being said, thank you very much for listening through. This is what I wanted to share with you today. And hopefully you found it interesting. And in case you have questions or you want to, let's say you have another view or observation, please share in the comment section. I would be very interested in reading your comment. And in case you found it helpful or interesting, please like, subscribe so the channel can grow, and recommend the show or the podcast to anyone you think they might be interested in this kind of analysis. With that being said, my name is Nelly Bekono. I am your host for Echoes of Change Culture in Flux, and hopefully speaking to you in the next one. So bye.
I didn't see the moment saw me. It felt true before it made sense. Felt right before it was. Not a break, not a decision, just a quiet kind of trust. And now I try to trace it backward, where it started, how it grew. But every step feels natural, even knowing what it does. Even knowing what it does. I don't ask what I believe now. I ask how it became